Two really quick things before I start. Number one, this video was recommended to me by Random Norwegian, a frequent viewer of the channel, so thank you for this idea. And number two, next week's video, I'm going to be doing higher or lower with one of the geography categories that I haven't done before. And also, it's been a while since I've done it, and I wanted to do it again. But onto the video. So today we're looking at what if there was an apocalypse that happened in the present world. Now, assuming you're over the age of 3, that would mean that you have lived through an apocalypse. Of course, we all know what year that was. But this one is going to be more warlike. It's going to be like a zombie apocalypse, kind of. And so it's going to start over here in Japan, more specifically in the city of Tokyo, which happens to be right about here. And the reason why is because this is the most populous city in the world with 35 million people. I made a short, actually, that Tokyo has more people than the entire country of Canada, which is pretty cool. But this is where it's going to be happening. So either it'll be like some scientists had like a bad experiment, or like the Fukushima water that they're dumping into the ocean wasn't completely clean all the way, and so now this city is infected. And so, reasonably so, the Japanese government is going to be quite concerned over this, and so they're going to quickly make a closed off area. So for this area, nobody is allowed in and nobody is allowed out to prevent the spread of the virus. And so, of course, the virus is going to completely engulf this entire area. But overall, Japan's handling it pretty well. They set up their navy to block all this in. But there's one thing you have to remember about humans. They're like rats, so they're going to go ahead and spread their disease as much as they can. And so Japan's going to start getting random cases of people turning into zombies all over the country. And eventually, it's just going to continue to spread through. And it's going to start to divide the island in half. So understandably, the world is pretty panicked at what's going on. Japan's trying their best to contain it, but it's not working out so well. So the UN in New York, they're going to have a meeting on this. But while that's happening, more of this plague is starting to happen, and it's spreading pretty fast. Eventually, the whole northern side of Japan is just infected. And so these zombies are acquiring Japan's military, which is not good for the rest of the world because Japan is like top 10 most strongest. And so with this, they're gonna start to just go across the Sea of Japan into Korea, which they do successfully land. So we're gonna see something that we'll probably never see happen. The USA, as well as China and South Korea and Japan, are tasked by the UN to do their best to prevent the spread of this apocalypse. And of course, this map doesn't show, but Pacific Ocean right here, USA just goes from over here to over here. And so they're going to do their best, but ultimately it's going to break its way through into Korea, and it's going to continue its spread. But this time it's going more rapidly, as it's pretty hard to deal with these zombies. And the modern day weapons at best slow them down, but can't really get rid of them. And so by now, Japan has just completely become a wasteland with this single island remaining. So the UN has two task forces. One is going to be Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the USA focused on trying to contain this over here. And the other is in Europe with like Russia and all the other richer countries. And they're going to try to find a cure to help with this. But meanwhile, there is a war going on. So the front lines are going to continue to morph as the UN isn't really equipped to fight well against this, and so South Korea is being evacuated as eventually it is just going to fall, and the invasion of North Korea begins. But here is actually a pretty interesting situation. So, North Korea is being invaded, and we all know who the leader is and what the leader likes most in the world, to unleash nukes. And so this is a perfect opportunity to test it, and which they do. It actually goes surprisingly well, and they're able to push back into South Korea. But of course, it's not going to last long as they're pushed right back out. But what's strange is the nuclear warheads are actually kind of working. But the zombies, regardless, are just going to keep on going up and through North Korea. So they also started to do their own naval landings in Taiwan, as well as entering the coast of China, which is not good because China is super powerful and they're going to need them to find a cure and to fight off the apocalypse that's happening. So Taiwan is going to be brief and it's going to start to fall quite slowly as China gets more and more infected. The use of nuclear warheads is being more and more applied, which for sure is slowing down the spread, but it's not stopping it, and eventually North Korea has fallen. So, seeing all this panic, we're going to see some more countries get involved. We're going to have Russia start to send their forces over to help fight this off, this is just an incredible tag team. These three countries working together to save the world. We'll never see that ever, but it's fun to imagine. And so let's see how this is starting to go. Well, of course, they're not going to be able to do much, but it's not too big of a spread. But more panic has been induced as they reach the Philippines and are starting to reach Vietnam. So, as these countries are being attacked, they're going to join the task force designed to fight off. But of course, it's going to be rather difficult for them to do. And so the green just continues to spread with no stop in sight as they pass over the mountains of China and into the southern portion of Russia. There are no clear borders of where the zombies are going, just wherever they can get their hands on and spread their disease. So by now, a good, like, say 250 million, maybe, or maybe even more, people have been infected by this disease and are just, once you get it, you're just brainless and start trying to spread it to everybody else. And so it's going by pretty rapidly because there's always a way to get it, and that's going to happen actually in the USA. There's going to be cases of this said disease popping up over here in Washington, as well as down near Los Angeles, and that's not good. But just like the coronavirus, it's going to be USA is going to be a leader in infections, and it's just going to spread, taking out the northern part of the USA. But there are some good news. Europe been working hard, and they think they've got something. So I guess it's time for them to test it out. Who would have thought that it would make them stronger? But it did, and now it's spreading faster. All of Taiwan is gone. Northern part of the Philippines has fallen, as well as the northern part of Vietnam. More and more countries are getting involved in the efforts to try and save humanity from this, but it's not looking good as it continues to spread in the USA. People from the West are flocking to the Midwest and the East. Fun fact, Wyoming has the lowest population of any state at only 500,000, Well, that's going to skyrocket to about 10 million now because of all these people leaving. But it's not enough. And with the new technology these zombies are getting, they're rivaling the most powerful country in the world. And so the complete West Coast is just gone. And so by now, every continent is going to have its case. And these in South America, both Peru as well as Argentina are going to have some cases. Over in Africa, it's going to be in Ethiopia and Somalia. And even in Europe, which is not good because this is where people are trying to figure out the cure. We see Corsica just completely gone. So by now, the front in China is just looking absolutely hopeless. By now, the majority of the country is being evacuated, and so there's just a giant wave that comes in, and it's not looking good. So eventually, time goes by, and China falls, as well as Vietnam, and now the other Southeast Asian countries are being attacked from all sides. Mainly, they don't stand a chance. I mean, sure, they have a jungle, but what's that gonna do for you against zombies? They start to breach Siberia and are gonna and just go through the entire eastern part and seep into Mongolia. And eventually, this part is just completely cut off, and they slowly move in and infect all remaining people over here. The UN over here in Europe once again thinks that they might have a cure, and so they test it out over here in the USA, and surprisingly, it actually kind of works. It's not reverting the symptoms, but it's weakening them so that the blue team is able to actually start to kind of push back, but eventually are going to be pushed right back themselves even harder because people just keep getting infected. It's always going to spread. And now it's starting to reach the Midwest, and it's going to seep into both Mexico as well as Canada. And so a big wall of green is going to start to form. Down in South America, the area around Buenos Aires is completely infected as it starts to bulge and move around, as well as in Lima, of course, because there's a lot of people, and it's going to start to spread up the coast. Over in Africa, we see the horn just completely taken out, as well as eastern Ethiopia. Over in France and Italy, we see the southern portion being breached, and of course, it's going to start making its way down the coast and incentivizing much more panic because these are the countries that are going to ultimately save the world or have the best chance at doing it, and it's spreading quite fast. So originally their operations were in Paris, but now they're going to move them over here to Copenhagen, which is where it's going to be much more safe, and they're going to be able to continue working while the end of the world is happening. In Africa, it's spreading quite well as so many countries are just completely falling to it, as well as in Southeast Asia. Things start to maybe look good when India has decided to get involved in this fight, but well, it's not gonna be good because there's so many people in India, and like New Delhi right there, it's gonna get majorly infected, and it's gonna spread everywhere. So from New Delhi, it's just a giant bulge, and many other hotspots in India start to pop up as they just continue to grow and feed off people and eventually link up. So slowly, one by one, so many countries are beginning to fall, and it's not looking too good as now Mongolia is gone, as well as all of East Russia. And so they're going to start closing in on Eastern Europe. But finally, once again, UN team thinks they've got it. And so they try it again in France, and it's actually going to work. After like capsules are deployed slowly, the people are going to revert back to normal. And so they are going to be able to actually get them all out of Italy as well as France with due time. And so production of a massive bomb to completely save everybody is in production, but they gotta go fast because there's a second wave coming. The front in Russia continues to grow bigger as more variants of this disease start to pop up, making it more invincible to stuff like the cold, the heat, and can go long days or years without nutrition. And so the front is going to pop up into these other countries down here. And so ultimately there's just going to be a huge sweeping movement as more and more people are going to continue to get infected. So Europe does have a way to cure this whole virus, and they're planning on making one big anti-zombie nuke, but it is going to take time and it's going to be quite the race against the clock as land in North America continues to fall in both the USA, Mexico, as well as Canada. Down in South America, we see Peru just completely infected, as well as Argentina. And these other countries here are going to also start the process of getting infected as they breach the Andes Mountain into Chile. Over in Africa, it's spreading quite a bit into these three countries of Egypt, Republic of the Congo, as well as Chad. And so the world is doing their best to use these pellets to cure them, but it's not a lot. The supply is pretty low, and they're still trying to develop a mass bomb to use. So we have the complete overtaking of Kazakhstan, as well as Russia and India, of course. And now they're on the front doorsteps of Europe. So there's going to be a giant wall of soldiers ready to defend because this they cannot lose this here. And so it's 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 not going well. Of course people are going to get infected. No matter what you're wearing, it's going to get in, and it is spreading fast. And the ones that are already infected are pushing their way in to Eastern Europe and are just completely causing havoc. But good news is it's all working out well over here. Their operations in Copenhagen are going well. They're going to go ahead and move them further back. They're going to move them over back to Paris because Copenhagen's a little too close because it's getting extremely close now. We see these Eastern European countries falling as the next wave of countries is up to bat to try and slow them down, in which they do actually, as they're getting more and more access to this equipment and are able to successfully and slightly push them back. And so eventually, after many years of trying, it's ready. The bomb is ready to be tested, and it just completely works. There isn't much damage to infrastructure, but that doesn't matter because the people are being saved, and slowly but surely the effects are being reduced. But the problem is, it's going to take quite some time to spread it around the world. So, in the meantime, we had this happen over in the Americas, but ultimately, more and more countries are being cured, and it's only a matter of time before everything is reverted back to normal. And eventually, the entire continent of Asia is saved from this whole pandemic. Even the host country of Japan is now completely cured, so it has moved on to Africa, And then over in North America, we see everything being reverted back to normal. And that is going to be the end of the video. It was, of course, different than usual, but of course, as always, it was fun to make. I enjoy it. Next week is higher and lower, so I hope you'll come back. Of course, it'll be on Sunday, and just have a fantastic rest of your day. I appreciate you for taking time out of your day to watch my video, and have a fantastic day.